Reed Dalloway wore a suit like a businessman, ran a courier firm like a professional, but built the UK's most invisible drug empire using postal routes and tracking codes. Silas, slick. Morven moved bricks of cocaine like birthday parcels, while Cassian Vale, a disgraced logistics planner, rewrote delivery routes to vanish in plain sight. And while Detective Elara Quinn followed a trail buried beneath fake invoices and silent streets, Imara Kincaid, the ghost in the network, laundered millions with a click and disappeared before anyone could blink. This is the shocking true story of how a suburban courier service became the nation's most dangerous cartel, without ever firing a shot. Reed Dalloway was the kind of man no one suspected. He wore tailored suits, drove a modest car, and ran a courier company called Swift-Link Logistics from a quiet industrial estate in East London. To most, he was a hard-working businessman who built his company from scratch. But beneath the surface, Reed was orchestrating the most efficient and discreet cocaine distribution network the UK had ever seen. His entire operation was hidden in plain sight, masked as everyday parcel deliveries crisscrossing the country. It started small, a favor for a friend who needed to move a small quantity of cocaine discreetly. Reed used one of his delivery vans, slipping the package inside a legitimate order being sent to a London office. It worked flawlessly. No one questioned the van. No one opened the box. That one favor lit a spark in Reed's mind. If he could hide one brick of cocaine inside a parcel, what was stopping him from moving 10 or 100? He reached out to Cassian Vale, a former Royal Mail employee who had been let go for tampering with internal delivery software. Cassian knew everything about the routing system's barcode manipulation and how to make parcels disappear from tracking without raising red flags. Together, they developed a plan that would turn Swift-Link into a silent freight train for Class A drugs. They used real customer orders as camouflage. Cassian built a system to reroute parcels after they were initially scanned, so drugs could be inserted after the legitimate order was packed. The altered packages were resealed with precision and routed back into the delivery stream, appearing legitimate to drivers and customers alike. Most times, the original contents were removed and replaced with cocaine, but sometimes, the drugs were simply hidden inside, sealed behind false panels or inside electronics. Nobody ever noticed. To keep everything efficient and clean, Reed only allowed pre-vetted handlers near the packages. Drivers were strictly monitored, but never told what they were carrying. Most of them believed they were delivering high-value electronics, sometimes under private contracts. What they didn't realize was that nearly every van carried an average of 6 kilos of cocaine daily, worth over 200 zalozen on the street. The packaging itself was expertly prepared. Each brick of cocaine was vacuum sealed, wrapped in multiple layers of carbon paper and mylar to block scanning or sniffer dogs. The gang even used spray on masking scents that mimic the smell of plastic or paper. It was innovation meets crime, logistics wrapped in deception. Silas Morven, known as Slick, was brought in to manage the street side. He was younger than Reed, but had built a reputation as someone who could make problems disappear. Silas assembled a team of young runners and handlers to receive the parcels, unbox them in safe houses, and distribute the drugs in smaller batches to dealers across the country. His methods were quiet and clean. No flashy cars, no loud parties, no attention. He used code words, changed phones weekly, and rarely met anyone twice. Each parcel delivery became a silent transaction in a larger, hidden economy. The operation expanded quickly. Within 8 months, Swiftlink vans were delivering packages loaded with cocaine from London to Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow. The volume of cocaine trafficked grew so large that Reed began outsourcing packing work to small, unregistered warehouses in the outskirts of town disguised as storage units or online resale businesses. These units became assembly lines for illegal cargo where trusted workers prepped dozens of parcels per hour. Reed's success relied on one key principle: invisibility. The gang never made scenes, avoided weapons, and treated their business like a corporate empire. Money came in through shell companies in Dubai and Luxembourg, processed by Elara Quinn, a cryptocurrency expert who handled laundering. She created false invoices, forged purchase orders, and turned drug money into clean investments. At its peak, the gang was moving nearly $4 million worth of cocaine every month without a single violent incident or major arrest. No one suspected Swiftlink, and Reed's name remained clean. The streets stayed quiet, and the parcels kept moving. Each one a brick of cocaine, sealed, stamped, and sent like just another package in the system. As the network grew, so did the sophistication of its operations. Reed Dalloway understood that success in drug trafficking wasn't just about moving product. It was about control, precision, and anonymity. To achieve that, he introduced what his team called the shadow route, an ever-evolving system of hidden drop points, coded communication, and silent movement. Every parcel moved through this shadow network without drawing attention. It didn't just blur the line between legal and illegal. It erased it entirely. Silas, Slick, Morvan was at the center of this expansion. He recruited a hand-picked crew of street, smart runners, all with clean records and quiet lives. These weren't typical gang members. They were delivery riders, students, and part-time workers with no criminal history. Silas gave them short-term phones, taught them how to read symbols and landmarks instead of maps, and used an app disguised as a food tracking service to send GPS coordinates. Instructions were delivered in short bursts, never full addresses, just symbols and visuals. The drop points themselves were disguised in everyday locations. A laundromat with a loose ceiling tile above dryer 4. A charity bin on a quiet side street where packages were stashed in a hollowed-out compartment. A derelict phone booth with a coded lock, containing keys to storage units filled with redistributed supply. These locations rotated every 3 to 4 weeks to stay ahead of suspicion, even if one was compromised. No single runner knew enough to bring down the system. Silas also used a unique method to prevent double crossing. No runner ever touched more than one parcel a week. They didn't know who they were working for, and they never met more than one handler at a time. All cash collections were done face to face under heavy surveillance, but only by trusted core members who had been with Silas since before the expansion. Everyone else was disposable, used once, then replaced. Reed, meanwhile, continued to expand the corporate shell around the operation. He created fake service contracts with third-party logistics firms, making it appear that Swiftlink was being subcontracted to manage overflow deliveries for major retailers. This gave them access to a vast database of legitimate delivery routes and timing logs, which they manipulated to insert their own parcels without being flagged. The real genius was how the cocaine parcels mimicked the appearance and weight of legal items. A box that should contain a printer did weigh the same as a printer, except it held 6 bricks of cocaine wrapped in electronics casing. Detective Elara Quinn had spent most of her career buried in files, chasing shadows left by clever criminals who were always one step ahead. But this case was different. It wasn't loud or messy. There were no turf wars, no bodies in alleyways, no panicked street dealers caught with bricks of cocaine. Instead, she noticed something subtle: delivery complaints from customers who claimed parcels never arrived, followed by mysterious insurance payouts from a courier company that, on paper, looked squeaky clean. That company was Swiftling Logistics. The first real lead came when a package meant for a small electronics shop in Kent was intercepted by a warehouse cleaner who noticed it leaking a strange white powder. When tested, the powder turned out to be pure cocaine. But the delivery logs showed nothing suspicious. The parcel had been scanned, labeled, and logged just like any other. The delivery van's GPS history was routine. Everything pointed to it being a mistake. Except Elara didn't believe in coincidences. She began a quiet investigation. Instead of alerting the company, she placed that van and others under discreet surveillance. Over the next few weeks, she mapped out delivery routes that crossed paths in strange patterns. 3 vans meeting in an empty car park, boxes being shifted between them with no entries in the system to explain the movement. Using traffic cameras and license plate readers, she identified at least 12 vans involved in the same network. None of the deliveries were late, and none of the parcels were ever reported stolen. Elara requested data from private courier insurance firms and found something unusual. Swiftlink had submitted over 20 high-value parcel claims in 6 months, mostly for electronics and consumer goods. The names on the delivery addresses weren't fake, but the parcels never reached their destinations. She dug deeper and learned that many of the addresses were unoccupied rental properties or closed businesses. That was the crack in the system she needed. Her team built a database of every parcel routed through those addresses. They cross-checked them with property registries, finding that some of the units were leased to shell companies, each with ties to Imara Kincaid financial trail. That was the first time Elara saw the larger structure forming the parcels, the false leases, the untraceable money. It wasn't just random deliveries, it was a lattice of organized deceit. But Elara needed proof, not just patterns. She focused on the drivers. After weeks of observing shifts and behaviors, one young man stood out. He was new, always nervous, and drove erratically, often pausing for long periods at unmarked locations. When officers quietly pulled his financial records, they found nothing unusual. But his burner phone told another story. Dozens of encrypted messages and calls, none of which were traceable. She approached him at home, not with threats, but with opportunity. Facing possible charges, he agreed to cooperate. He wore a wire, and for the next 3 weeks gave Elara everything: parcel routes, drop codes, dead drop locations, even partial names. He didn't know who was in charge, but he had once overheard the name Slick during a parcel handoff in a Croydon parking lot. Armed with this intel, Elara began quietly intercepting parcels. They rerouted a handful, removed the cocaine, replaced it with identical packaging materials, and sent them along. The gang never noticed. The drugs were pure and professionally wrapped, confirming what they suspected. This wasn't small-scale smuggling, it was industrial. They traced one of the intercepted packages back to a Swiftling return center, a converted garage with tinted windows and an unmarked door. The team installed covert cameras and watched as men arrived at random hours, stayed for under 10 minutes, and left with tightly sealed boxes. On one occasion, a man entered with a parcel marked as audio parts and left with 3 different boxes loaded into the trunk of his car. The van he arrived in had been previously used in the Kent delivery case. Now Elara had visual proof, routes, and a cooperative witness. Still, she held back. She wanted the man at the top, whoever was pulling the strings. She suspected it was someone in Swiftling's leadership, but had no name, no face, only patterns and silence. But she knew how to break the silence. It would take one more move, a trap built from their own methods. The gang wouldn't see it coming. The gang even took advantage of failed deliveries. If a package couldn't be delivered due to the recipient not being home, it would be returned to a secure Swiftlink hub. Not an actual returns facility, but a converted garage with one purpose: drug repackaging and redirection. Cassian Vale managed these locations with military precision. He ensured that no package sat longer than 6 hours. Everything was either moved out or destroyed. To keep law enforcement off their trail, they also planted noise. Every month, they allowed a dummy parcel to be seized. One that contained a trace amount of product, just enough to make the police think they were making progress. It bought them time and redirected attention towards street-level dealers rather than the invisible couriers above them. These decoys were carefully designed, often loaded onto older vans that were being retired, creating a paper trail that looked like disorganization or independent smuggling. The money never stopped flowing. Elara Kincaid, working from her flat in Bristol, used decentralized cryptocurrency exchanges to push profits across multiple international wallets. She paid her team in crypto bonuses, moved large amounts through gambling sites, and purchased properties through shell buyers. Every financial move was buried under layers of transactions too complex for average investigators to untangle. Despite the increasing scale, no one got greedy. That was Reed's rule. They didn't live flashy lives. They wore modest clothes, kept quiet online, and never spoke of business outside designated locations. There were no parties, no exotic cars, no sudden bank deposits. That was the secret to their survival. While other gangs fought over turf and spilled blood in the streets, Reed's empire operated in silence, hiding cocaine in plain sight. No violence, no witnesses, just parcels moving through the veins of the nation. Undelivered secrets masked as everyday packages. Detective Elara Quinn knew she was close, but catching the gang red-handed required flawless execution. She needed to force the operation to expose itself. And the best way to do that was to give them something they couldn't ignore. A parcel designed to destroy them from the inside. It would appear just like every other cocaine shipment, cleanly packaged, routed through the shadow route, and placed into their system. But this one would be laced with silent weapons. An embedded GPS chip, a micro camera hidden in the lining, and traceable powder invisible to the naked eye, but detectable under forensic lights. To pull it off, Elara and her team created a fake shipment under a real Swiftlink tracking number. They generated a convincing invoice for a supposed shipment of gaming consoles and routed it from one of the gang's known prep garages. The parcel was packed at a secure facility under surveillance, then loaded onto a SwiftLink van driven by an undercover officer posing as a temp driver. Everything matched the gang's standard process. The bait was set in motion, and it didn't take long for the network to respond. Surveillance picked up the package as it traveled to a secondary location in South London, one of the gang storage units disguised as a small tech repair shop. Cameras installed nearby captured a familiar face. Silas "Slick" Morvan. He approached the van, took the package, and handed it to another runner, who disappeared into the back alley entrance of the shop. Silas's calm demeanor was a sign that he didn't suspect anything. The parcel had blended in perfectly. What Silas didn't know was that the moment he picked up the package, the embedded GPS began transmitting. Within minutes, Elara's team had a live feed showing the interior of the drop location. They saw a workbench, multiple unopened boxes, cash being counted, and what appeared to be a laptop connected to a logistics server. More importantly, they saw 3 men unpacking and cataloging the bait parcel. All of it was recorded in real time. Elara gave the order wait. She wanted the parcel to travel further, to follow it through the next layer of the operation. Hours later, the same parcel, now resealed, was handed off to another van and transported to a gated property in Surrey, an estate registered under a shell company linked to Elara Quinn. A tall man with close, cropped hair received the package and carried it inside. Facial recognition confirmed it was Reed Dalloway himself. This was the moment Elara had been building toward. Within 48 hours, simultaneous warrants were prepared for 6 locations. The fake garage return hub, the South London drop point, the Surrey estate, SwiftLink's head office, Emara's known residence, and a secondary laundering front disguised as a cryptocurrency training center. All teams moved at once, coordinated down to the second. At Reed's estate, officers entered to find him in his private office, calmly deleting files from a computer and shredding papers. In the corner was a floor safe, half open, containing USB drives, currency bundles, and handwritten notes with parcel tracking numbers. His reaction wasn't panic, it was disappointment. He didn't say a word as officers placed him under arrest. At the drop site, Silas was taken into custody as he was counting out newly delivered packages. Cassian Vale, found at one of the packaging units, tried to flee but was caught a few blocks away. Amara, however, was missing. Her apartment was empty, her phone off, and her last known financial transaction traced to a crypto wallet pinged in Montenegro. It was clear she had vanished just before the storm hit. Back at the station, detectives sorted through evidence. The camera footage from the parcel had captured every step: unboxing, repackaging, sorting, even conversations about distribution. The embedded powder had marked the hands of everyone who touched it. Forensics confirmed it matched residue found on money, packaging tools, and even vehicles. The gang had been tricked by their own precision, brought down by the same systems they trusted blindly. With Reed, Silas, and Cassian in custody, and evidence linking them to thousands of parcels moved across the country, the case was nearly airtight. Yet Elara couldn't shake one lingering thought. Emara was still out there, and someone as careful as Reed wouldn't have let her go without a reason. There was more to the story, but for now, The empire had fallen, and it had fallen hard. News of the bust spread across the country like wildfire. UK's cleanest courier unmasked as cocaine superhighway. One headline screamed. Another called it the Royal Mail of drug lords. The public was stunned. The idea that thousands of packages had traveled through ordinary neighborhoods, hidden inside delivery vans, shocked even the most seasoned crime watchers. But behind the headlines and mugshots, a more complicated truth was unfolding. Reed Dalloway remained stone, faced through every interrogation. He didn't deny the charges, nor did he attempt to defend himself. He simply said nothing. Investigators combed through the seized hard drives and handwritten logs found in his hidden office safe. One ledger listed more than 200 delivery routes with timestamps, aliases, and coded references to high-value drops. In another folder, officers discovered internal SwiftLink reports manipulated to cover missing or rerouted parcels, complete with forged customer complaints and refund notices. It was the architecture of a criminal empire disguised as routine service. In court, Reed's silence was broken only by his lawyer. He refused any plea deal. He gave up no names. Even when presented with surveillance of his direct involvement, he only nodded. The court labeled him a criminal mastermind. But what stood out most was the absence of aggression in his empire. No guns, no violence, no threats, just structure, just systems. It made the operation all the more dangerous because it had looked legal. Silas slick. Morvan, however, did not stay silent. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the reality of life imprisonment, he agreed to cooperate. His testimony revealed details even detectives hadn't uncovered. How he recruited runners from social media job boards. How drop codes were changed weekly using obscure song lyrics, and how Reed had once said, "Our strength is in visibility." Silas described meetings where new packaging techniques were tested to evade sniffer dogs, and drop spots were tested with fake parcels to gauge how quickly police reacted in different regions. Cassian Vale provided insight into the back-end operations. He explained how the parcel rerouting software worked, how false GPS pings were generated to throw off investigators, and how returned parcels were always sent through third-party couriers to break chain of custody links. He confirmed that every element of the business was structured like a corporate chain of command, with no one knowing more than they needed. He admitted that even he didn't know Imara's full name until her apartment was raided. Imara Kincaid's disappearance became a puzzle of its own. Her bank accounts were drained in the 72 hours before the raid. Security footage showed her leaving her Bristol flat carrying only a laptop and a duffel bag. The last ping from her mobile was near Dover, after which her digital trail vanished. Europol was notified and Interpol added her to the red notice list. Some believe she had been tipped off by Reed himself, perhaps as part of a contingency plan if the operation ever fell. Others suspected she was the true mastermind, and Reed took the fall willingly. As the case wrapped up, Elara Quinn stood before a boardroom of senior investigators to deliver her final report. She laid out a timeline of the gang's rise and fall. From the first intercepted package to the day the bait parcel turned the system against itself. She was commended for her work. But the room grew silent when she ended her briefing with a warnings. They were the first to do it like this. They won't be the last. Despite multiple convictions and over 100 related arrests, the fallout continued. Copycat operations started appearing across the UK and parts of Europe, mimicking Swiftlink's methods. Courier companies began scanning high-value parcels more aggressively. Insurance claims for delivery thefts rose as more criminals realized how easy it was to exploit postal systems. Reed Dalloway was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 28 years. Silas received 15 years with parole eligibility after cooperating. Cassian got 12. But Amara Kincaid was still missing. Her face appeared on screens in airports, customs offices, and financial institutions across Europe. Yet no one had seen her. She had vanished, just like the Parcels once did. In the end, what began as a courier business turned into a quiet empire that used everyday systems to flood the UK with millions in cocaine. The legacy left behind wasn't just about crime. It was about how easily the legal world could be bent, reshaped, and used against itself.